Hi, and welcome to the Org Dev podcast. Organization development is a discipline that has the power to transform organizations, shape cultures, and empower individuals. Yet it's often shrouded in mystery and misunderstood. But fear not, because this podcast has been designed to pull back the curtains to reveal the inner workings of organization development. During the course of these podcasts, we demystify the concepts, unveil the strategies that are used, and delve into the real life experiences of professionals who are driving real and significant change and innovation within organizations. So, this podcast is designed for you whether you're a manager looking to find new ways of working in your organization, an HR professional who's curious and wanting to explore OD, or even if you're a seasoned OD practitioner and you're just curious to find out what iconic organizations are doing when it comes to OD. It's a fascinating field and you'll learn loads. So this episode in particular, we're delving into the world of organization effectiveness. So this is a discipline a number of forward-looking organizations are implementing into their business. However, like organization development, there's a number of different definitions. So in this first of two episodes, we're inviting a brilliant guest practitioner to share their perspective. And in this first episode, we're inviting Kelly Venkia. He's going to shed the light on an iconic organization that touches all of our lives, Amazon. And she was spent 15 years at Amazon for a period of unprecedented growth as it soon became one of the world's largest employers and an absolute feature on the financial markets as well. So in this episode, Kelly's going to explain more about what organization effectiveness was to her and her work at Amazon, the work that she did, how she did it, who she did it with, and the results that she achieved as well. It's a really fascinating exploration, and a huge thank you to Kelly for being so open and taking the time to join us as well. So I hope you enjoy this. You've got a really interesting journey, starting at Chorus, is it the still producer, all the way
Yes.
through to Amazon. So can you just share a little bit about your background and how you got started in the field of organization effectiveness?
Yeah, of course. So Chorus Steel, that's now Tata. That's where my HR journey began. Being totally transparent, I fell into the world of HR. It was never intentional, but I am glad I'm here. I actually started in Chorus as a transportation apprentice. So that's something that a lot of people don't know about me. And but I worked far away from home, and I used to drive past the local steel site. I just wanted to have a role closer to home because I've never known what it is that I want to do. You know, people say, what do you want to do when you grow up? I'm not even sure any of us ever grow up.
Well, very few of us grow up at the age of 3 knowing we want to be in HR, do we?
No. Although after this podcast, they absolutely will.
I think they will.
I starting in recruitment closer to home, where a role became available. That was where I was introduced to HR. 18 years ago, I didn't know what HR even meant. So when I started in recruitment, I had the pleasure of really getting to know the ins and outs of generic HR as well, because you have all of your challenges that come with recruitment, your employment law awareness as well, and also getting to know about roles and how they contribute, because essentially you've got to work on the recruitment strategy. So that was my entry into HR, which was recruitment. But I was really interested in the generalist side because I like to know and work on everything. So the generalist piece, I managed to get a role again within Tata, and that really propelled me into employee relations. It was a heavily unionized environment as well, and with a really large workforce, with a corporate structure, but also with blue collar workers as well.
When you say large workforce, like how many people are we talking here?
8,000 plus at the time. And some of those were contractors, majority permanent staff. So it was a really interesting dynamic, because you had business leaders that were speaking a corporate language, then you had business leaders that were speaking a operational language, then you had union leaders that were, you know, a bit of both, and also obviously had their own kind of aims and strategies with the employees that they were looking out for. So that was really interesting. Take a step back. I started my CIPD level 3 back in 2006, I want to say. And I worked through the CIPD while I was working full-time, up to and including level 7 and chartership as well. So I started that in Chorus, and then I thought Amazon was advertising, and at that time I only thought Amazon did books, and I thought, oh my gosh, there is no way, you know, it was almost like a celebrity type of role. There's no way I'm gonna get that. And I applied for a HR assistant generalist role for Amazon, and I went through a hiring process, which is actually still in place today. It's evolved in terms of becoming more efficient, but it's the concept is still there. And following that hiring panel, they actually called me and asked if I would be interested in a HR business partner role. And I think that's just testament to the opportunity that I had in Tata. So I'm very grateful for that. The imposter syndrome was insane. You know, the title of HR business partner, you know, we talk about definitions. You can have a HR business partner that in one organization that is enormous, and you are partnering with the SVPs and things like that. Or you can have a HR business partner in a smaller organization with just the same amount of different responsibilities, but supporting a smaller network and doing more transactional work, just like organization effectiveness. Mm-hmm. So ultimately, I've never had career aspirations as such. I've always wanted to be successful, but I've always been very amenable to being, you know, learning new things. I'm fiercely inquisitive. Any of like my past clients, current clients, people I've worked with, if you were to ask them about my traits, and I used to get this through feedback, it would be, I ask questions because I want to know the bigger picture, and it's not necessarily HR. The HR bit comes in at the end. So, and that leads into some organization effectiveness. Am I bouncing about?
No, not at all. Because it's interesting, because when we've spoken to, because a lot of people go into organization development, for example, and they often go through like the business partnering route, and they like, you know, but they're doing the role, but there's a few common threads, which is to be really curious. But I really like your term, fiercely inquisitive, which is, so why is this and how does this, and also being big picture.
Not people outside of HR.
Yeah, but it helps you do your role better, doesn't it? Because you can see how all the different things connect, and I think that's just such a common thread that's run through everything. And interestingly,
and it has to be.
Yeah, but not everyone does it, I guess.
No.
But opens things up for you, doesn't it?
Yeah, and maybe we can go on to that a little bit in terms of working traits and things like that. But it's for me, you know, when I went into Amazon, my mindset has always been the same, even from when I was really young, you know. So asking questions and making sure that HR, but basically people who are not in the room, their views are represented in order to drive positive change for the business and also for the workforce. So Following my initial HRBP role in Amazon, which was in the Swansea Fulfillment Centre or Distribution Centre, I spent about 4 or 5 years there. And I then did a project in France. They wanted someone who was fiercely inquisitive to come and do some research on employee engagement levels within the French HR function. And that was amazing because it was a country perspective. So the Amazon business areas within France, the same as any other country Amazon has presence in, you'd have corporate, you'd have operations, it just, so really get into grips with all of that. And also, works councils in a different country and things like that. That was really, really interesting. So I was contacted by a colleague that I previously worked with in the fulfillment centres about a European role to work in HR services, it was called at the time. And this was a new concept for Europe, but it was already established in the US. So essentially that was consolidating all of the kind of repetitive HR tasks in order to free up HR business partners and managers to, truly partner with the business and drive change. So things like payroll, your employee queries, absence reporting and things like that. So I was asked if I would apply for a role that was in HR services, now called employee services, I think. And my specific deliverables within a 10-month period was to obviously work on the baseline strategy of having a tier 1 and a tier 2 HR service, which for those who are not familiar, tier 1 being kind of pick up the phone or send a message and get a response back. Tier 2 being more the back office processing and how it works there. Your policy implementations, your leave of absence requests and all that type of stuff. So, and it is a funny story because I've always been a type of person who I will get presented with something and it won't daunt me as such. But I am of the opinion of, oh, okay, well, it is what it is. And this is a perfect example because I was interviewed for a HR specialist role and to focus on implementing or building the processes for an EU attendance reporting line, HR queries, payroll queries, all to be developed and hired in the Czech Republic. So there was a service centre in Prague, and I was basically going out to Prague every Monday, coming home every Friday for about 8 months or so. Really, really interesting because obviously not just, I'm looking at cultures across all of EMEA at this point, because even though we're in the Czech Republic, we're trying to gather all these processes and ways of working from all these EMEA countries. I think there was 17 in total. And my first day, so I was really nervous. I hadn't, I remember I traveled to Berlin and the director at the time said, right, here is the org structure. A PowerPoint with an org chart goes up. And I'm not on it. So I'm thinking, oh, well, actually, it's my first day. So maybe that's why. And then next slide, there was just one box with one name in it. And it said, Kelly O'Leary, because that was my maiden name. Kelly O'Leary, EU project manager. I'm thinking, what's a project manager? Because I that's not what I applied for. It's not what I was spoken about, you know. So anyway, obviously, I'm like a swan. Yeah, oh yeah, of course. And Googling what a project manager is under the table. And ultimately, I went from being that kind of process specialist to something a lot more strategic very, very quickly. So it was a massive shock to the system. But we did deliver a telephone line and a chat function for 17 different European countries. And we did it with minimal interruptions. And at the time as well, Amazon supported me with the Prince 2 qualification as practitioner as well, which would have been amazing before. So it's kind of like, do it, learn from it. And it's the same as my approach to CIPD. I started in HR and it's like, oh, actually, I might go and get the qualification now.
Well, it's a really fascinating story, isn't it? And like, I think sometimes it's really important just to remind ourselves, like, Amazon during that time was going through explosive growth, wasn't it? It's
Oh,
probably the best
yeah.
way to describe it. Sort of like stats 2020, it had 1.2 million employees, and it had just added 427,000 employers. Now these are cities being added to the workforce, aren't
Yeah.
they? It's now 1.5 million. It's 5% of all retail sales in the whole of the States. When its share price moves, our pensions move because it is such an intensely valuable organization. So, to thrive in an environment like that, where it had gone from bookstore, which is essentially what it was,
Yeah.
to everything everywhere all at once, wasn't it? Kind of model,
Yeah.
and to be part of that. So, obviously, being open, seeing the big picture is really easy, but how do you sort of thrive in an environment like that? What is the mindset that helps you sort of adapt to all this change that's happening? Because it's often where we would describe it at the edge of chaos. You're trying to
Oh,
create
yeah.
order at the edge of chaos, aren't you?
I used to get appraisal feedback on a regular basis. You know, it was the common thing that I could never work on as such, which was I'm the calm in the chaos. So something explodes, I'll be like, okay, everybody, let's take a minute, breathe, and we'll make a plan. And then at the end of it, I'll be like, oh my gosh, what has happened? I'll have that delayed reaction. I think to your question though of how do you thrive in an environment like that, it's about just accepting that that is the way. It's okay to make mistakes, intentional mistakes, different HR route. But actually mistakes to learn from and actually improve processes and mechanisms and ultimately develop people. That's how it works. And I think within Amazon as well, even though it's a heavily matrix organization, you have access, regardless of level, to really senior leaders who will happily give you the time to explain things, and there's a mindset piece here as well. So, for example, if you're not okay with change and you're not okay with fast pace and you're not okay with ambiguity, then I think any fast-paced organization is probably the wrong place. But I think with more of a mindset of we are all one team, we are all working to one goal. Yes, that goal may change, just like that. Yes, we can question it, but ultimately, we're here to deliver. And as long as the people are taken care of and the organization's being successful, then that's fine. And obviously within legal and compliance parameters, obviously.
100%. Yeah.
That's a prerequisite.
And we'll take a bit of a deep dive into the organization effectiveness and come up with some examples. There's nothing like a few rich examples to bring it to life, but like it's sometimes it's important to think about the context in which you're operating and some of the leadership principles, and this is all in the public domain as well.
Oh
So
yeah, yeah.
things like customer obsession, and it I guess we're just interested like ownership. It's like the principles are out there. Leaders are owners, and they think long and hard about things before making decisions.
Mm.
Invent and simplify, and leaders are right a lot. So these are the like codified principles, and I like are they kind of not necessarily drilled into, but they're kind of that's your mantra within the organization.
Yeah, I mean, those leadership principles transcend through every part of Amazon. So whether it's a sourcing strategy, whether it's, hiring, whether it's, org development, talent management, and creation of policies. There is there's two new principles that have, I say recently, within the last couple of years, come in, which is being, I think it's the most employee centric company or something like that. I can't remember the specifics, but ultimately, customer obsession, absolutely. Start with the customer, work backwards in order to have a conversation. It's not an environment where someone in C-suite has said, this is what we're doing. It's okay, here are the aspirations. Like what are the customers saying? What do the customers want? And we used to celebrate, in all hands and things like that, about even things that had gone wrong because of what it had changed. And at the time, with Jeff Bezos being there, and there's a clip on YouTube where he talks about giving ownership to customer service associates answering the phone or trouble tickets and things like that, and basically giving them the power to take a product offline completely, which from a business financial impact is quite big. But these are the individuals who are taking a call, and the example used was I think it was a table or something that was online, and there was a potential safety issue with it, and they wanted to what they call an and-on. They gave the customer service associates the ability to pull an and-on, essentially press a button, take it offline and report it to investigate it. Because from a customer point of view, even though it may not be available to the customer, even though Amazon or the third-party seller may be losing out, the safety of that customer and that customer experience is key. So that's just one example of customer obsession.
That's real clarity, though, isn't it? And that's really delegating authority to people that, in many organizations, it would become like a multiple sign-off thing, wouldn't it? Whereas here it's like...
Yeah, and, there are legal frameworks that obviously require a bit more of a structured decision-making process, but always for the benefit of the customer, not the company. And that's one of the things I, to this day, I love about Amazon, because as a customer as well, I feel it. When I've had issues, it's resolved straight away. But for me, the customer obsession, there was a question mark for me and for many others about, okay, well, does that mean employee obsession as well? Because, our employees, customers and things like that. And the answer is no. But there was definitely an opportunity to create something that meant that strategic decision making would absolutely integrate the employee experience. That's where the leadership principle came in for the employees.
And employee experience and employee is something that you're really passionate about, isn't it?
Yeah.
So let's go into that. So can you give an example that showcased organization effectiveness in action? So a project that you worked on, or an initiative that really sort of highlighted what it was?
Yeah. I think to kind of set the scene a little bit, organization effectiveness is only effective when you have your strategic ducks in a row. You have your business leaders, your CEOs, your CPOs, your CFOs, head of departments, all aligned first, because otherwise it's going to come crumbling at some point. So there are a few different projects that I worked on. I think the implementation of the European shared service piece is one. My role before being in European transportation HR, I worked in global talent management back in, I think I want to say 2017, 2018. There was a very kind of positive, disruptive conversation about talent management processes in Amazon. And this is all, available on LinkedIn and different business things. So basically, we were all sat in a room. Certain people were asked from different countries to go and work on confidential projects that had certain names, all surrounding food, which I don't know why, but every time we went to one of those meetings, we were hungry. We went into a room not really knowing the gravity of things, and the SVP of HR at the time came in and said, this is the biggest people shakeup, people policy shakeup that we want to focus on. And everyone in this room is going to deliver that. And we're on a tight time scale. You have to, and depending on which countries you own or support or whatever, then that's what we need to do. So my role went from being just supporting, one business area to supporting all Amazon businesses in 17 different countries to roll out brand new, well, first of all, develop, do the groundwork. Thank goodness for Prince too. Do the groundwork, all the due diligence, engage all of the right sponsors and things like that, and develop a process that was legal and just in all these different countries for all these different business areas, in countries where some had works councils, France, Germany, Italy, and Spain. And, pulling all of that together for one talent management process, which was like succession planning, promotion, and things like that. The performance management side and what is widely known as appraisal as well. But the appraisal system wasn't taken away, it was refocused. And it was called Forte. And this culture shift was huge because Amazon, and anyone who's been in Amazon for a long time who remembers like the original processes, Amazon are not afraid to fail. They encourage their employees to try. And if they fail, then we need to learn from it,
And that's not empty rhetoric, because loads of companies say, fail fast.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, this particular timeline didn't give much room for failure and then learn. So we did trip up and get up quite a lot. But the task was enormous as well. With Forte specifically, we went from what 360 feedback of what does this person do well, what could this person improve on, and, goals for the next year. Forte changed mindsets. So Forte, and we had a competition as to what it was going to be called, actually. I can't remember the name of the project. Again, it was food. But the actual program name, Forte, is about strength-based feedback. So, and all of the technological developments to help support that in such a large organization as well. It was strengths-based. It would ask questions such as, what's your top 3 superpowers? And they weren't allowed to be leadership principles at first. It had to be, think about your traits. Think about, so one of the, as an example, fiercely inquisitive. That's not a leadership principle, but it's something that, really helps me help my clients and my business partners. But Amazon being in the mindset of, you walk out with appraisal and you don't listen to what good things people say. Mm-hmm. And I think that's in every organization. It's oh my gosh, they think I, should work on this, and this. Oh, that's what I'm just going to spiral into, and I'm not going to focus on the good. Whereas Forte, was about a very motivating, positive, this is what you're really good at. Like, how can we harness that and help your development, help business development? That mindset, I mean, it takes years and years and years for a culture and mindset shift, doesn't it? But that was something that I rolled out with a team in EMEA, and I led the program team. I reported into Seattle, but my team were rolling out across Europe, Middle East, and Africa. And then to support that process, there was a program called Pivot, and Pivot was the performance management piece. And I think, the concept of pivot in this is my view, is that performance management is not just for Q1. And it should be in real time, it should be transparent, it should be respectful, and it should give the employee the majority power of what happens next for them. This isn't kind of a schoolyard or anything like that. These are individuals, making a living and just trying to, make a good life for themselves, whatever that is. Pivot was essentially someone was starting to underperform and had been for, depending on what country, a certain amount of days, weeks, months, etc. But baseline 3 months. And they'd have supportive conversations within that time, almost like the informal coaching type thing. And then after that period of time, if the performance didn't improve and, whether adjustments had been made or not, then they'd go into a more formal conversation called a pivot conversation. And so first of all, it wouldn't be a surprise because no one likes Q1 surprises. Q4 surprises, yes. Q1 surprises, no. And Q1 was always a stressful time where people had worked their hardest ever in Q4 because of obviously retail and things like that, being very busy. To come out of that, and then, we still need to be positive. We still need to keep going. So Pivot, as an example, if I were not to be meeting my role expectations and there wasn't any kind of real reason for it, or, anything that the company could help me with, then I would be given 3 choices as to whether I wanted to go on a performance improvement plan, whether I wanted to leave Amazon with kind of a set calculated severance, or whether I wanted to appeal the fact that my manager has put me in this pivot program, essentially a grievance against the manager. And that part, and this is a perfect example of learning, the appeal part wasn't really working for anyone. It was putting the employee through additional stress. There was already, complete procedures or, things to tackle that way. almost felt like it was duplication of effort and duplication of stress. So that was one thing that we tried, didn't work, scrapped it, but we kept uh, the PIP route and the leave route. And it was, the pivot process gave such an enormous amount of ownership to the employee. You know, it wasn't kind of a behind closed door, don't tell anyone conversation. It was a, listen, if this isn't for you, you need to tell us and we can help you with some options. Or if you really want to work and improve on this, then we will help you 100%. So again, kind of disrupting it, but that was in real time. And there was technology to underpin that as well.
So at scale, multiple systems, legacy
oh my
processes,
gosh.
and then sort of lowered on the top of this.
And then GDPR regulations and Works Council agreements in different countries. That meant a lot of it still had to be paper-based. Can you believe?
Good Lord.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think sometimes it's easy to underestimate how different employment law is across the European region, like levels of
Yeah.
bureaucracy and all that as well. So, wow, so it's just managing so much complexity, isn't it? And
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah. And
unintended consequences as well, I imagine.
yes, yeah. Well, when you, with any type of change, whether it's a large business, whether it's a small business, you know, any type of change is going to feel uncomfortable. I think human nature leads us to be suspicious of why, which in the form of, you know, when we refer to organizational effectiveness, that's why, you know, robust and transparent communication and mechanisms that support the overall goal is what is absolutely necessary, not to put employees under any undue stress. And when I say mechanisms, you know, you don't have to be in a large corporate organization to have a mechanism.
Mm.
You know, it's just the three kind of, I don't know, touch points of, okay, let's create a return to work form. That's one part of the mechanism. Let's communicate that process and policy, and let's make sure it is complied with through, you know, maybe a weekly check-in of how many return to works and all. So that, you know, if any part of that mechanism goes, doesn't work. So it is our organizational effectiveness on a tactical level is a lot about mechanisms, but obviously the strategic org effectiveness piece is the more prevalent things to create the mechanisms.
And one of the things when we first met that stood out for me is you're really passionate about employee engagement, and kind of like it's kind of organization effectiveness and employee engagement go sort of hand in glove almost, don't they? You've got really strong views on this. What are some of the beliefs or principles that you think every organization should adopt to be successful with effective employee engagement?
Well, first, well, fundamentally, an employer needs to care about their people genuinely, not just say that they do. They need to have empathetic leadership. You know, no employee goes to work really wanting to do a terrible job. You know, everyone, you know, goes to work with a view of it contributing to their outside of work. And you find some work environments, and I find this with some of the clients I'm working with at the moment, in terms of how do they change from genuinely not caring, because they'll openly say, because, and I appreciate that because it means they want to, but they need to be honest and they genuinely need to care about the employees, but also demonstrate that they care and also be vulnerable. You know, admit that they may not have got things right. You know, be willing to change and also have an infrastructure and an organization that is designed to support an employee experience. And in my view, employee experience should be that prerequisite of any strategy, purely because without the positive employee experience, you're not going to achieve your business goals in the manner that you'd really want to, because you'll have a lot of disengaged. It's not to say you won't be successful, because a lot of organizations who don't show good employee experience are still successful, but there are casualties along the way. And it doesn't, like, morally, it feels very wrong. Which is why I feel quite passionate about it. Every client that I have, I will, when I'm on a discovery call with them, for example, I will absolutely ask them what their genuine kind of driver is. If they're willing to, really be challenged and have a mirror held up to them and be honest about what their intentions are, because I will be much more effective from an organization effectiveness, employee engagement, HR solution, whatever, if those leaders want to invest. They're going to waste my time and I'm going to waste their time and their money if they don't believe in it. And I don't want to engage with clients like that. So we have had examples where clients have said, they want certain services, but because I don't feel like their principles align with mine in terms of my organization and taking care of people, then that is something that is kind of a conversation stopper.
That's really powerful, isn't it? And I think a lot of consultancies could probably benefit from that kind of approach. And what I guess what's really reassuring is that there's such a strong correlation in the research, isn't there? Is like highly engaged employees that are cared for absolutely deliver results, don't they? It's almost like look after the relationship and the relationship will look after the work almost.
Yeah, and it's about putting yourself in that employee's position, because everyone's experiences are different. Everyone has this stuff going on, and everyone is at different points of their life. But what we can't get away from is the economical situation at the moment and the impact that's having, not just on the employees, but on businesses as well. And I think what a lot of businesses don't really have time to think about a lot of the time is, what can I do for my employees to make their life just a little bit better and a little bit easier? And it's not about pay rises and things like that. It's about truly being empathetic and making, some small tweaks, small changes.
And we always like to, for the people that are watching that have got an interest in developing a career in organization effectiveness, we always ask everyone who comes on, what tips do you have for professionals starting out in your field? So if someone is thinking about either sort of pivoting their career or entering as new, almost like you found your way into it, what advice would you give them for getting started in the field?
I'd say my top tip is not focusing on organizational effectiveness being just a package of something that you can learn ABC, tick, tick, tick. It's not a tick box exercise. It's an evolving principle that allows businesses to create frameworks and structures to drive an amazing employee experience through use of really effective mechanisms. So in that regard, you need to be open-minded. You need to be willing to be wrong. You need to be okay being challenged, and you need to be okay with challenging. And I think when we think about work environments, whether it's in a consultancy perspective or in an organization already, there's going to be those organizational cultural elements in the background as well, in terms of HR and org effectiveness employees feeling comfortable to use that voice, feeling comfortable. So being comfortable in your own skin, which is not easy. But I think the rule of thumb I've always lived by ever since starting in HR is, regardless of my opinion and my advice on something, I can go to sleep knowing I've been true to myself and to whoever I'm supporting without any subjectivity. And if you can kind of detach kind of the emotion a little bit, which sometimes is described as cold, but it's effective. It's not about being nice, it's about being kind. And sometimes you need to be, a bit more vocal with your opinion in order to bring kindness, I think.
Yeah, as my business partner always says, Danny, she says, clear is kind.
It
I think
is.
that's quite an important
It
thing to
might be
think.
uncomfortable sometimes, but and as long as people know the intention as well, and I think, but that's part of building the relationships in the first place. If you turn up and show up as your authentic self, and this is me, and take it or leave it. Hope they don't leave it in the consultancy world, as you won't make a living.
Well, no, it sounds like a very values-based approach. And obviously, you've taken all that experience from Amazon. You've got a sort of strong principled approach. It sounds very values-driven as well. And you've set up Venkia Consulting. What are you trying to do with Venkia? What's the impact in the world it's trying to have?
I've always been someone who wants to help people. My why for setting up Venkia HR Consulting, it's always been an aspiration anyway. But I did leave Amazon with a heavy heart. It wasn't easy because my own personal circumstances meant I needed flexibility. I needed, and also, I don't like being told what to do. So being my own boss is great. Yeah, but no, fully transparent. I want to bring what I am passionate about in a packaged way, be a strong advocate voice for the employee experience, which doesn't mean I am, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm still on the side of the business, but you can't be a successful business without that employee experience as well. So it's kind of a win-win, isn't it? So my business is centered around working with people who want to review their employee experience. So we offer employee experience audits as an example. And then we also look at new startups as well. You'll have people, and we're seeing a lot of young entrepreneurs at the moment coming through and wanting to build something that is ethical, that isn't forward thinking. So that generation of business owner now is thinking in that way anyway. So I'll help build packages and an infrastructure for that, so that we can start on the best foot rather than do the reactive stuff. The reactive stuff is fine as well, because it means that the business has got the right intention and the employee will benefit. So
a partner for growth as well. Great. And if anybody wants to contact you if they've got any questions about the things you've talked today about Amazon or Venkia Consult, what's the best way for someone to reach you? Are you happy for them to contact you?
Absolutely. Yeah. So they can contact me on LinkedIn. If you go on my profile, there's a link to my booking system for a 30-minute free just discovery, no obligation call. I do offer more official mentoring for various different topics, OE being one of those.
Brilliant. And we'll put your details in the show notes if you're watching this on YouTube, and there'll be contact details in there as well. And then just one final thing. Obviously, one thing that's come up in the conversation today is obviously your involvement in the charity, the Tiny Tickers, which is the Tiny Hearts charity. I don't know if you want to just say a few words about that and the cause and what it supports as well.
Absolutely. So first of all, thank you for giving me the space for that. I have a little boy, Miles, who was born with quite a serious heart defect. However, that heart defect was detected during my 20-week scan. And whilst it felt like the world was falling, looking back now, I was so fortunate that it was detected, because otherwise, if he'd been born without it being detected, prognosis wouldn't have been great. So Tiny Tickers is a charity that I try and do a lot of fundraising for. We've just finished the 125 challenge in October, where we covered 125 kilometers, and others did as well, which is amazing. So because this charity focuses on early detection and it trains sonographers in terms of what to look for, money raised goes to specialized equipment to check newborn babies really quickly, so even if they haven't been early detected, they're not sent home with that heart defect. So yeah, that's kind of my chosen charity in terms of Venkia HR, obviously with a personal connection as well.
Brilliant. And if people want to contact Tiny Tickers and support them, obviously we'll put the comments in the show notes. What's the best way for people to contact them and support them?
Yeah, you can always donate, or actually, if anyone listening is going through any different situation in regard to that, first of all, anyone can ask me. I literally just kind of fundraise because I appreciate them so much. But you can contact Tiny Tickers directly. I'll put all of the information on there for sure.
Fantastic. Well, Kelly, I just want to say a huge thank you for your time. What people may not notice is that this conversation has been so interesting. We actually done it in 2 parts. We actually only booked in an hour for this discussion, but we overran and we've come back again because it was just so fascinating. So I'm sure that people watching this have learned so much in terms of what organization effectiveness, which is what we really wanted to set out to do. And it's a kind of a really emerging field, but undefined field as well. So I know you've definitely added to the body of knowledge around there, and also given some really fascinating insights into an organization that touches all of our lives, Amazon, but may not understand what goes on beneath the surface. Like, how do you grow at such amazing scale as well? So I just want to say a huge thank you, and thank you for taking time off from Venkia Consulting to help us out today. Hopefully in the future come back to us as a guest and give us even more insights, so that's all right.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you. Cheers.